Moving on into the second part of the week 1 online lecture recording video, then we will discuss in here what does a model mean. So model is a representation of a physical system by mathematical equations. Models at their best are no more than approximations of the real process. In here, meaning that if you have a chemical process, as a chemical engineer, you should be able to basically describe those processes in terms of the mathematical equations. Because a chemical engineer, they have to use law of physics such as a conservation principle, transport phenomena, thermodynamics, and chemical reaction kinetics to be able to describe and predict model behavior of the of your chemical process. Okay, so unlike a chemist where you work on the lab scale of a certain chemical reactions or a chemical process, chemical engineer main task lies in the scaling up of those laboratory scale processes into the commercial scale processes, and in doing so you have to use logical or rational sets of laws to guide you through to a proper design. So as a chemical engineer, you have to deal with a lot of these mathematical equations and the physics law. Another part of a model that is important is the simulation. Modeling and simulations are an integral part, like they cannot be separated from each other. They are integrated because once you have the model, then you want to be able to basically find out how the model behave with the different input variables. So if you change, for example, these input variables, or you change that input variables, or you change these operation variables, then you should be able to basically judge what will be the model behavior. Okay, once you get the model, then that means you need to be able to basically solve the model equations analytically or numerically. Analytically in here meaning that you can just use a simple calculations on a piece of paper to basically derive the solutions for the model. For the numeric, is like if your equation is so complex, it's consisting of several differential equations or a combination between the algebraic equations with the differential equations, then you have to use a computer program to solve those equations. But not to worry. I mean, even though in real situations almost everything needs to be solved numerically, there are numerical software like MATLAB or Aspen Plus or Aspen HYSYS that can easily help you to solve the problem. And why you study the model and simulation is that because in a real situation, of course, you need to get an experimental data, but modeling and simulation provides a cheaper way and also a time saving way to basically predict an output of your process instead of doing the real experimentations and observations on the real system that may be costly and timely. In this figure, basically we show you a system. A system is basically defined by something that separate it with the surroundings. It's called the boundary. You can have many definitions of the system. For the classification based on the thermodynamics, for example, an isolated system meaning that there will be no transfer of mass or energy between the system and the surrounding and vice versa. Okay, and then for the closed system, there will be no transfer of mass, but a transfer of energy is possible. And then for the open system, there will be a transfer of the energy and matter between the systems and the surroundings, basically. Okay, and then classification based on number of phases referring to the phase within your system. If it is a homogeneous system, meaning that it's consisting of one same phases throughout the system. If it is a heterogeneous system, then it can consist more than one phases, such as the liquid, solid, or gas. Also, model can be divided in terms of the theoretical, empirical, or semi-empirical. Theoretical is based on the fundamental principles. If you develop something based on the first principles, so like transport phenomena, for example, if you develop it based on the conservation of law, and then and which includes the constitute basically mass balance and then energy balance or the momentum balance, then that's called theoretical. If you develop a model where you base on the observations of how the experimental data behave, then it's called empirical. And a model can also be a semi-empirical model as well. Okay, and besides based on the theoretical or empirical, it can also be based on the steady state versus dynamic, and then lump versus distributed, linear versus nonlinear, continuous versus discrete, deterministic versus probabilistic model. Steady state versus dynamic is common, okay, and lump versus distributed parameters is also common. So these four will be mainly the dominant content of the unit. Okay, and then it can also be covered into linear versus nonlinear, continuous versus discrete, and deterministic versus probabilistic model. These two we will not discuss in this unit, but this two is also forming something that is important in terms of the process integrations, which is the key, the core areas of two other of your lecturers, Dr. Mahmud and also Dr. Hao. But for the sake of this unit, we will not covering these two yet. Okay. What does steady state and dynamic mean? Steady state is meaning that there will be no change in the process variable with times. So I think in your previous unit you have been covering in your intro, you have been covering a lot on the mass energy balances of steady state systems. Okay. In dynamics, the process variables in your system, such as the temperature, pressures, and other things, will vary with time. This dynamics is defining something that is more real in real situations, and it's basically covered a lot in the process control. Okay, and then in your process plan design as well as during the startup and the shutdown of your particular unit operations, this will be important as well. You may then ask why we study the dynamic behavior, because dynamic behavior is important because we need to study the operability and the controllability of continuous processes subject to small disturbances. In real situations, system is a subject of the different input. So the input, for example, if you are dealing with the heater, then the input to your systems maybe vary in terms of the temperature, in terms of the flow rate. Okay, then that needs to be controlled to make sure that your process will have a consistent behavior over time. And then as you know, in the process you may need to start up and shut down as well your plant, and then also you may need to study the switching of the continuous processes from one steady state to another, and it becomes an important part of also of the safety of your processes, especially if you have a large disturbances, unforeseen disturbances, then you need to basically know whether these large disturbances may have a serious effect into your process or not. Okay, and then dynamic behavior is also required when you want to basically study the design and operation procedure for intrinsically dynamic processes such as a batch, periodic, or separation processes. This flowchart basically shows you the process that is involved in the systematic model building. So the first one will be involving the problem definitions. What is the particular process or the model that you are dealing with, and then what are their possible inputs, outputs, etc. Then you need to identify the controlling factors. What are the controlling factors? And once you get that thing, then that will be an evaluate the problem data, and then you start on constructing the model, and then you will solve the model, verify the solution, validate the model, not the flow back in here. This one is basically showing that it's an iteration process. So after you solve the model, you may need to go back again and check whether that the model output is accurate enough. If not, then you want to go back into and construct the model again. And then if not, then you verify after you get the solutions, then you basically go back into again to solve the model. In here you basically verify the parameters or basically judge the suitability of the solutions based on the model. And then once you validate the model, you may want to go back again and look into your controlling factors, whether the model is basically representing the real situations or not. Okay, if not, if that is good enough, there is no problem with the controlling factor, then you can basically just go back into the evaluate the problem data. In essence, model is creating model and solving a model is basically an iteration process that depends on the assumptions of how much assumptions that you need. Do you want it to be very accurate? Do you want it to be very precise? And then how much effort that you want to spend onto your model, and etc. As a rule, basically you don't want to do too complicated models that basically does not justify the time that you put into solving the model. So normally you just need to basically use a model that can describe the real behavior. Okay, so that really depends on how you do that thing. So for those that has past transfer phenomena, they know about this modeling on the transfer phenomena that I described last semesters, and I will describe it again on my next semester transfer phenomena as well. Okay, and then the ingredients of the process model. The first thing that is important is the assumptions. What do you want to assume? Is the time, is it constant, or the spatial characteristic, is it constant? And then the flow conditions as well. And then after that, then you will define what belongs to your model. Is it a mass, or is it an energy, or is it momentum, or it can be two of them, or it can be three of them simultaneously. Or if you can assume that the energy is not dominating, there is no energy transport in your system, and there is no momentum transport, then you can just go with the mass transport. And then based on the different models that you get, for example, if you're dealing with the transient model, then you will need initial conditions. If you are dealing with the distributed model, then you will need to have a boundary conditions, and also you will have to specify your parameters. Then we go into the process classifications of batch versus continuous. Batch system is basically feedstock for each processing steps are charged into the operation unit at the start, and then the transfer of the material to the next operation unit occurs discontinuously via intermediate storage tanks. Batch process are intrinsically dynamic. Okay, so the conditions within the equipment will vary over the duration of the batch. A good example of this is, for example, a reactor, where you have A, B, C, and D. Then you put that thing on the time 0. You chunk in all these four. No, it's not all these four. Probably only the reactant. The reactant in the beginning of the reactant, you probably only have A, because you know that only the concentration of A decreasing over time. Okay, and then what is not participating in here is D. So basically D in here is just a diluent, something that is added just as a diluent. Over the time, we know that a B is produced in here, but up to the certain time, then B is also consumed. C, on the other hand, is produced continuously from 0 up to 500 in here, for example. So this basically represent concentration that is different as a functions of time, which is a good example of a batch processes. Okay, then variations to batch operation is possible, like a semi-batch process where you basically add one or more feedstock to a batch unit operation, and then a semi-continuous where some products are removed during the batch process. On contrary to the batch processes, the continuous processes. In continuous processes, the temperature or basically the variables of interest for the process is basically constant. In the beginning, for example, even if we use this example as a plug flow reactor as a continuous process, in the beginning during the startup and the shutdown, then of course the temperature will vary. So if we take at this particular point of 0 in here is as a 0, and then this particular position in here as 3 in here, you can see that the reactor in here is quite constant. It has a difference of about only 0.2 degrees Celsius. Well, despite the variations from these positions to these positions in here, as you can see in here that the temperature on the inlet in here is tend to be colder than the temperature on the outlet. But I mean it's only forming a little bit. It's the variation is not very high. It's only about 0.2. So it's about 101, 101. Okay, so 101.0 up to 101.20. Okay, and the time in here is showing that from 0 to 5 there is not much changes over these durations, as you can see, for all these positions in the axial directions in here. Okay, so that these positions can be assumed as a continuous process. Okay, so continuous in here is defined as it's involved continuous flow of material from one processing unit to the next, and then it's usually designed to operate at steady state, but due to external disturbances, sometimes the continuous processes can operate dynamically. Now, if I go into the batch operations in here, okay, why for a chemical engineer batch is preferred over continuous? So several reasons that we can mention in here is because of small quantities are required, or if not, then batch to batch accountabilities. So batch becomes preferable over continuous if you need to produce small quantities, or if batch to batch accountabilities are required if you're making something like a pharmaceutical products. Okay, and then if there is a seasonal demand of products or feedstock availability. Seasonal demand of product or feedstock availability, meaning that if your particular raw materials is only available for at a particular season, then you need to consider this batch as well. And then need to produce multiple products using the same equipment. And then another reasons will be if you have a very slow reaction, or high equipment fouling. Fouling means that you have some kind of unwanted product that is formed in your reactor that basically stuck to the wall of your reactors or the wall of your heater basically. So all these factors are very important when you basically consider as a chemical engineer why batch is preferred over continuous. Okay, then we shall move on into the next part of the slides that I want to continue in the next video. Thank you so much for listening.